South Africa, a land of diverse beauty and abundant resources, has a history marked by conflict. This nation, with its breathtaking landscapes and rich cultural tapestry, has seen its fair share of turmoil and strife. From the rolling plains to the rugged mountains, every corner of this land tells a story of struggle and resilience. In the late 19th century, tensions between the British Empire and the Boers, descendants of Dutch settlers, reached a boiling point. These tensions were not just about land, but also about control, power, and the future of a region rich in resources. This clash of interests led to two devastating conflicts known as the Boer Wars. These wars were brutal, with both sides suffering heavy casualties and the landscape of South Africa being forever altered by the battles that raged across it. The First Boer War erupted in 1880 and lasted for a mere 5 months. Despite its short duration, it was a significant conflict that set the stage for future hostilities. The Boers, with their knowledge of the local terrain and guerrilla tactics, managed to secure a victory against the British forces. However, it was the Second Boer War, spanning from 1899 to 1902, that would leave an indelible mark on South Africa's history. This war was far more extensive and destructive, involving large-scale battles, sieges, and the widespread use of concentration camps by the British. The Boers, also known as Afrikaners, had established independent republics in South Africa, the South African Republic, also known as Transvaal, and the Orange Free State. These republics were a testament to their desire for self-governance and independence from British rule. They were fiercely independent and sought to maintain their autonomy. The Boers had a unique way of life, deeply rooted in their farming communities and a strong sense of identity and culture. The British, on the other hand, had a growing imperial presence in southern Africa. Their ambitions were driven by a desire to expand their empire and control the valuable resources of the region. They were attracted by the region's strategic importance and its vast mineral wealth. The discovery of precious minerals turned South Africa into a focal point of British colonial ambitions. The discovery of diamonds in 1867 and gold in 1886 in Boer territories further fueled the ambitions of the British Empire. These discoveries brought a rush of fortune seekers and intensified the competition for control over the land. The influx of British miners and prospectors into these areas led to increased friction with the Boers, who saw their way of life and independence under threat. The Boers were determined to protect their land and resources from what they perceived as British encroachment. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations, a conflict that would test the limits of endurance, reshape the political landscape of southern Africa, and leave a legacy of bitterness and division that would linger for generations to come. The Boer Wars were not just battles for territory, but battles for identity, sovereignty, and the future of a nation. The discovery of diamonds near the Vaal River in 1867 sent shockwaves through South Africa and beyond. This discovery was not just a local event, it had global ramifications, drawing attention from major colonial powers and adventurers alike. It sparked a diamond rush, attracting fortune seekers from all corners of the globe. These prospectors, driven by dreams of unimaginable wealth, flocked to the region, transforming it almost overnight. This newfound wealth, however, also fueled tensions between the Boers and the British. The Boers, who were primarily farmers, saw their way of life being threatened by the influx of foreigners and the rapid industrialization that followed. The diamond fields were located in a disputed territory, and both sides claimed ownership. The British, with their imperial ambitions, were determined to control these valuable resources, while the Boers were equally resolute in defending their land and autonomy. The situation escalated further in 1886, when gold was discovered in the Witwatersrand, within the South African Republic, also known as Transvaal. This discovery was even more significant than the diamonds, as it promised even greater wealth and economic power. This discovery transformed the region into a major gold-producing center, attracting even more British prospectors and investors, who came to be known as Uitlanders. These newcomers brought with them not only their mining expertise, but also their political and economic ambitions. The Boers, wary of being outnumbered and outmaneuvered in their own land, viewed the influx of these outsiders with suspicion. They feared that their culture, traditions, and political independence were at risk. The Boers, under the leadership of Paul Kruger, the president of the Transvaal, sought to protect their interests and maintain control over their territory. Kruger was a staunch defender of Boer rights and was determined to resist British encroachment. They imposed restrictions on the Uitlanders, including denying them voting rights and imposing heavy taxes on the gold mining industry. These measures were intended to limit the political influence and economic power of the British settlers. The British government, under pressure from mining magnates like Cecil Rhodes, who held considerable influence in the region, saw these actions as an infringement on the rights of British subjects. Rhodes, in particular, had grand visions of British expansion and was not willing to see his plans thwarted. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the tensions failed, and the stage was set for war. The negotiations were fraught with mistrust and mutual accusations, making any peaceful resolution increasingly unlikely. The simmering resentment and mistrust between the Boers and the British finally boiled over, igniting the Second Boer War in 1899. This conflict would become one of the most significant and brutal wars in the history of South Africa, leaving a lasting impact on the region and its people. The Second Boer War began on 11 October 1899, with the Boers launching preemptive strikes against British garrisons in South Africa. This conflict was rooted in the struggle for control over the rich resources of the region, particularly gold and diamonds, which had been discovered in the late 19th century. The Boers, descendants of Dutch settlers, were determined to maintain their independence and resist British imperialism. The Boers, skilled horsemen and marksmen, initially gained the upper hand. Their intimate knowledge of the South African terrain allowed them to execute swift and effective attacks on British positions. The Boers' mobility and expertise in guerrilla warfare made them formidable opponents. They employed guerrilla tactics, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. This unconventional warfare involved hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, and sabotage, which kept the British forces constantly on edge and disrupted their supply lines. The early stages of the war saw the Boers besiege key British towns like Ladysmith, Mafeking, and Kimberley. These sieges were intended to cut off British communication and supply routes, putting immense pressure on the British military and civilian populations within these towns. The British, initially caught off guard by the Boers' ferocity and military prowess, suffered a series of humiliating defeats. The British troops, accustomed to traditional European warfare, struggled to adapt to the Boers' guerrilla tactics and the challenging South African landscape. These early setbacks shocked the British public and forced the British government to commit more troops and resources to the conflict. The news of British defeats was met with disbelief and outrage back home, leading to increased pressure on the government to turn the tide of the war. Under the leadership of Lord Roberts and Lord Kitchener, the British Army in South Africa was reinforced. These experienced military leaders implemented new strategies and brought in fresh troops, determined to regain control and assert British dominance. They adopted new tactics, including the use of scorched earth policy and the establishment of concentration camps to counter the Boers' guerrilla warfare. The scorched earth policy involved destroying Boer farms and resources to deprive the guerrillas of supplies, while concentration camps were used to detain Boer civilians, aiming to break the support network for the fighters. The tide of the war began to turn in favor of the British. With their new strategies and increased manpower, the British forces started to gain ground, capturing key Boer positions and disrupting their operations. By 1900, the British had relieved the besieged towns and captured the Boer capitals of Bloemfontein and Pretoria. These victories were significant milestones, signaling a shift in the momentum of the war. However, the Boers refused to surrender. Despite the loss of their capitals and the increasing pressure from British forces, they remained resolute in their fight for independence. They continued their resistance, waging a guerrilla campaign that would drag on for another 2 years. The Boers' determination and resilience prolonged the conflict, making it one of the most challenging and costly wars for the British Empire.